Welcome to Gunners R Us podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. So today is a little, probably 30-minute preview of Arsenal versus Villa at Villa Park, and Arsenal versus PSV at PSV in Champions League on Tuesday before we record our weekly podcast with Joe and Simon on Wednesday. I thought I'd just jump in because of the midweek games. I did an extra pod on Monday, and then we did the Wednesday, and then I thought jump in quickly before the Villa game today and also before the weekend. So hopefully this will be up in the next hour, and you can listen to this maybe before the 3 o'clockers and the 5:30 where Arsenal play Villa. But if you haven't seen already, the Gunners R Us podcast, the full episode from Wednesday was up on YouTube at the Brothers Or YouTube. If you want to check out how it visibly looks, visually looks. But if not, make sure you following us on our podcast channels, all the different forms: Spotify, Google Pods, iTunes. We are Gunners R Us. Give it a 5-star review while we're at it. And also, Joe and I have a secondary podcast at the Peppercorn Boys. You can find that anywhere you find podcasts as well as the Peppercorn Boys on YouTube, where Joe, myself, Bruno, and then there's 2 other peppercorns waiting to join from the WWE, which is the Pretty Deadly Lads. So let's get down to business. We have Arsenal versus Villa Park. Arsenal won there last season. If you remember, it was the Jorginho goal off the back of Martinez, which is the ultimate poop housing goal of all time, potentially, from that player to that player. It was wild game because I watched that with Joe, and I think when we scored the third, because it went to 3-2, and then we scored another one, I think Martinelli ran through on goal from a halfway line and he put his arms up. Another really good trolling goal. But Joe, I think he smashed a plate by accident, but he claims it was on purpose just for excitement, because it really felt like we were going to lose. I think we were 1-0 down, maybe 2-0 down at one point. Or it was 1-0, 1-1. I remember Ollie Watkins opened the scoring because Zinchenko made a mistake, which very much could be the story of today, with Zinchenko being available and Tomiyasu not being available, because it looks like Tomiyasu's out for 6 weeks. I think we found out since the last pod. And since the last pod, another thing that happened, just to kind of add to all this, was Man City played Aston Villa at Aston Villa. And if you watched the game, Man City were completely destroyed in every aspect. Less corners, less possession, less shots on goal, less shots on target, less touches in the opposition's box. Everything was low, which is just unheard of with Man City. And Villa just completely nullified them and won 1-0. I think it was 1-0. Did it end 1-0? I think it ended 1-0. Yeah, I'll check that. But this kind of adds to a couple different patterns forming, because one of them would be that Man City have now drawn 3 in the league and then lost 1. And then in amongst that, also drew in the Champions League. So that's 4 draws in a row in all comps and then a loss in the league. That is kind of unheard of when you think of last season. By the end of the season, they've drawn, I don't know, 3 games, lost 2, that kind of thing. These are big numbers to be dropping. But the fact that they're only 5 points behind Arsenal is a real worry, because we've started relatively well as far as stats go. But as far as the eye test, I think people are saying City and Arsenal just definitely aren't firing. I don't think that Liverpool are. I don't think anyone necessarily is, but I think City just look the worst of them. But I'm sure they'll still win the Premier League. But they're in a very bad run of form. But Aston Villa at Villa Park, that is now 14 games undefeated. No draws, no losses in a row. The last time they were to lose at Villa Park was early on this year when they played Arsenal and we won 4-2 with the goals I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of setting up for I don't know, a hell of a game. And, there's a couple ways to look at it, because you could say Arsenal put in a lot of effort at Luton, and then Villa didn't necessarily at City because of how dominant they were. But I'd probably say that Villa were probably taking enough out of them trying to get that dominant performance over City, because even if it doesn't necessarily look as hard as maybe Arsenal versus Luton does on paper, I'd say it probably worked. The work effort is a lot higher. They were all over the shop trying to make sure they got that point. And we played City this year, and that looked very much hard work. And again, we broke the records for, more possession and the less shots on goal. for Man City, lost less touches in the box. We broke that record under Pep, and then Villa, 8-9 weeks later, broke the exact same record. So again, that is trending downwards for Man City. But I think Villa, that was probably the best performance they'll put in all year. I think again, Q in, I don't know, 9 hours later, and they've just beaten Arsenal 3-0, and maybe that'd be the best performance. But even if they do beat us, I think that was their best performance because of the domination. The chances of them dominating us that well and winning and us not scoring, us not getting shots on goal, I just don't think that will happen. They definitely could win. If anything, if I was I am a betting man, bet responsibly. I would bet on Villa, but I won't just go never bet against Arsenal. But I would, just because I went for them against City this week, and I also went for Everton this week over Newcastle just because I fancied it. And both of them, you know, what is the saying in MMA? I think they say like styles make fights. I think with football, I think it's very similar. Villa desperately needed to beat Man City because they really want to prove that they're in the top four race. It came at a perfect time. I think they put everything into that. They got it right. They did it. And then we might get, and also they had a day less to recover. I think we might get a more tight game. So something where they're slightly more, tired. We are as well from the Luton because that's a lot of energy and a lot of emotion went into that match. But I'd say that we have a deeper squad, so we could rotate slightly a lot of the players that played in that game out and still kind of put up a good match. Whereas Villa, I think, they have their 11. And maybe Diaby could come in. I saw later on in that game, I think it was Diaby and Ramsey came on, which is very good subs to bring on. But I don't know. I feel, and I know we've got the injuries with Tomiyasu and Timber. So at the back, it's becoming a bit, of a worry because Kiwior started that last game at Luton. And I don't think he'll do that again just because of the way that first half went and the first 60 minutes went. I think once Zinchenko came on, we were a lot more profitable going forward, but he'll definitely be worried about McGinn, Watkins, because obviously Watkins is in between two centre backs, but McGinn is kind of picking up areas where he could go out wide. He could kind of drop into that area where Rice is, which is a good battle for Rice because I do think Rice will stick to that the whole game. But on social media and stuff, I think there's been a lot of Jorginho content on Arsenal, which is usually a sign that maybe they could start. So I wonder if they'll pop Jorginho in the middle because obviously he scored there last time as well. So maybe they're just going with kind of good faith and maybe put Rice left 8 and then Odegaard. And I wonder just to kind of compact that middle because their middle is very good at the minute with Tillemans as well. McGinn, it just looks on a different level than what it was last year. But then up front, I think you'll see Saka for sure. It's whether Jesus, who, in the week, Eddie never came on because I think you couldn't have dropped anyone. And again, Havertz had probably his best game. If they progressively been getting better, and it'd be a shame for him to miss out on this one. But I know with the short turnaround that a couple people are going to have to switch out. And I wonder if it'll be Havertz and Jesus. But I wouldn't mind it if it was Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard, and Havertz number 9 with Martinelli and Saka. And then later on in the game, you could bring on Jesus, Eddie, Trossard, try some things like that, and just maybe bring Rice back into where Jorginho is, bring Havertz into the 8 role, or Trossard even, just to kind of say there's an option of a place to go. So we're not playing all our cards off the bat. We go 1-2-0 down, and then there's nowhere really to go, and it's kind of odd subs like Eddie coming on for Jesus, and you think you're weakening your side because Martinelli's such a danger. I really like Trossard coming off the bench for Martinelli as opposed to the other way around. I think Martinelli's a starter, and then as Arteta would say, Trossard might be an impactor. But I don't know. As far as team news, that's what I just got a feeling Jorginho's coming in. The other question mark will be obviously Ben White has to play now because of the Tomiyasu injury, and he's just coming back to fitness. Saliba, Gabriel, Ray is an interesting one. It props that back up. Like, is it a Ramsdale game now all of a sudden? I don't know. I don't think so, but it probably should be with the mistakes he was making, Rare, in the Luton game, because we can't afford to do that. Because if we do that in the Champions League, if we were in a first leg of Champions League in a quarterfinal against Real Madrid and Rare throws in two in his own net, it pretty much ends the tie. So, we got away with it at Luton in one game. You can't get away with it in other games. And this is a game that you couldn't get away with it. If we were to make mistakes, that would be the game. Similar to it reminds me a lot of the Newcastle away game, which I know ended in a an odd ref decision. But I feel like something like that will probably be the catalyst for the outcome. And I don't necessarily mean it'll be the refs. I hope it's not the refs. I would have thought it'd be like a bit of brilliance or maybe a mistake from defensive, like we saw a lot in the week with Trippier making mistakes. I think in the Chelsea game there was a mistake that led to the goal. I don't know. It just seems like that is what leads to goals now. Is it's always mistakes. And I think Mourinho said all goals in football are mistakes. You never have a goal that doesn't have a mistake. But I mean, I'm talking about glaring obvious ones like the trippy ones in the week. I do think Zinchenko could either open up Villa and it could be a good day for us, or he could allow Villa to open us up. And that I think will be the talking point. So again, Q8, 9 hours, Kiwi was left back. And I really like Kiwi, but I just feel like the games in which he starts in that left side, I think of Nottingham Forest away last season where we lost 1-0 and they became safe and we pretty much ended our title run. I think of the Luton game the other day where we just weren't firing how we usually do. And you just, I'm sure a left back shouldn't be able to dictate the whole team's rhythm like that. But it does to an extent because you think of how much Zinchenko dictates the way in which we play. So I think it can. So if it's not there, I think it can be just as visible as when it is there. So yeah, I think the talking points will be Zinchenko, Jorginho potentially coming in, and whether Eddie starts. Because I mean, if you sign him to a new deal, we're chasing a game like against Luton, and he didn't bring him on. It's quite telling. And then to play 3 days later and not still bring him in as fresh legs, it could be a worry. But Eddie's record away from home is so bad. You just don't know whether that is something you want to get to. But as for City, they're playing Luton this week, and I wonder if we're going to get a response from them finally, because obviously when they have Rodri out, they do lose. That is like kind of an ongoing thing, and people have said like the wording is what annoys me. So they say when Rodri is away, he's their most influential player, so they struggle. When Arsenal missed Partey for all this season, or like 7 months of last season, and Saliba, and all these kind of influential players that people talk about how good they are, it's just that we bottled it. So I don't understand the difference, to be honest, because they're missing De Bruyne and Rodri. When we played them this year, we missed Saka and Partey, but no one mentioned that. We just won, So I think it's odd what they decide to pick up on. But Rodri is back. Luton away. The underlying metrics of the Luton away was that we threw it in the net twice and then gave away a set piece. But other than that, we created about 11 chances and we had 70 plus touches in their box. One day, and I've said this on the pod, a team is going to really do a crazy number on Luton. And I said it would either be Arsenal, City, Liverpool, and I thought Newcastle, maybe even Villa. Just teams that are just really aggressive when they attack. And Liverpool drew with them. We ended up winning 4-3, but again, created a hell of a lot of chances. And on another day, could have been 5 or 6-1. But I'm thinking more at home, someone's going to. But even at their ground, they are so aggressive in the way they press all at once that teams like Arsenal, for example, we wanted them to press. And as soon as they pressed in the game, they didn't press for about 30 minutes. As soon as they pressed, we scored. And I worry that they're going to try and press City while the City are kind of down. They're going to try and catch them out. And I think this could be the first big result at Kenilworth Road for another team where they just smash them. And Haaland's blanked in about 3, City genuinely blanked in about 5. So eventually it's all got to come good. And I know that they're playing, I believe, tomorrow, the 2:00 game. I think it's on TV. We've all gone with a City win, 4-0, 3-0, that kind of area. But it's talking about, for you fantasy football guys out there, whether to triple captain Haaland, because you just, he can't blank that many times in a row, you'd think. Luton vs Man City is the televised game tomorrow. Today we've got Crystal Palace Liverpool in a matter of an hour or two. And we've got the Villa Arsenal game. The pick of the bunch from the 3:00ers are Man United Bournemouth could be interesting, but I think with the way Man United performed in the week, they should be okay. Wolves Forest is a big one as well, because they're saying that if Wolves were to win, Steve Cooper will be sacked as Forest manager. And I'm not sure who would take over from that because that's a it's a weird little space to be in. But moving on away from the Premier League, well, before we move away from the Premier League, the referee from the Arsenal Newcastle game did a letter uh, about the decision in that Newcastle game that obviously that we all know is incorrect, but for whatever reason people defended the decision. I'm just looking to see. Oh, don't think that's his name. Arsenal Newcastle ref. That's what I'll look up. What is it? I'll try and find this by the end. The referee from the game essentially has said that he apologizes for the decision. And looking back, he believes it probably is a foul or an offside, which again doesn't help us now, but it's just funny because again, when the pundits are contorting to try and help the PGMOL, and then one of the refs actively says, no, I got that wrong. It's not a good look because we've had a few decisions this week that Howard Webb on his program with Michael Owen has come out and said, no, I think this is correct. And it's just not. And it's just, you get into a point where you're just thinking, this is just a propaganda show to kind of hope that people go, oh, okay, maybe it was right. And it wasn't. They're just actively getting stuff wrong now. So I don't know what's happening there. I feel like this season's going to be, not an asterisk next to the season, but it's going to be a season that definitely defines where they go with the refs and VAR and all those things. And hopefully it'll get better because we've had a couple of years where the VAR's been fine, a couple of years where you just think, what is the point in this thing? Like, it's just in the way. And before we move on to Champions League as well, I can tell you the prediction league so far, we're halfway through this week because on Wednesday we'll go through it. But there was 20 points up for grabs. So far, 10 have been available. I can say that one of us, I'm not going to say who until Wednesday, was close to getting 10 out of 10. They got 8 out of 10. So unless this week goes particularly bad, they're in good stead. I'm sure Simon's hoping it is him because he is behind by about 12 or 13 points. But we've got some big ones today. And then tomorrow, Spurs Newcastle, after their 2 losses in the week, is going to be a huge game. And I would love nothing more than Newcastle to win that, even if they are top 4 rivals to us. Well, Spurs were supposed to be title rivals with us, but that's changed, isn't it? So, wow, Spurs, 1 point from 15. Son might be injured now. If that was at Newcastle, I'd be very worried for them. But it's not. It's at home. See what happens. God knows what could happen. But I think in the prediction league, Joe and I both gone for Newcastle and Simon's gone draw. So it's not boding well for them. But I'd love to see them have 1 point from a possible 18, considering they won the first 10 games of the season. So could be a good season to watch as far as an Arsenal fan, but time will tell. And I think today will have a big impact on dictating whether I feel we are in a title race. I think if we win today, I think you really have to be thinking that that's a hard team to beat away from home. Even a draw I'd take right now. If we lose, I think it is just a 3, 4, 5 potential horse race this year. Because if City it's gonna be that year. The 1 year that Pep had a bad year, Leicester won it. Could the 1 year that Pep has a bad year again be the year that Villa win it? Because if they beat City and Arsenal in the space of 4 days, I mean, they deserve everything that's coming to them. So we'll see. Arteta is away from the bench today, remember, because he ran a foot onto the field. They didn't like that because they don't like him very much. They asked the Luton manager about it, and he said, I would have been crowd surfing, so I don't know how he got yellow carded for that. And I'm sure if he crowd surfed, he wouldn't have got a ban either. But we're moving on. We're away to PSV on Tuesday before we record. This has no implications for us now. But again, it'll be a very interesting match because obviously it's Christmas time and we are looking at constant fixtures. We might have to rotate heavily because the depth, like things like Vieira, Tomiyasu, Timber, Partey, these guys being out injured and Smith Rowe, it makes those matches harder because as much as I always say now, the Carling Cup team of Wenger's era, you'd kind of not know any of the players and it'd be interesting to see them. This year under Arteta, our Carling Cup team is essentially our first team, like of last year, or mostly this year. It's not far off. Like there's very little filler in the team, but the problem with that is if you get 3 or 4 injuries like we have at the minute, that depth really squeaks away. So we've got PSV away. I can look at the Champions League table. We are topped. Us and PSV are both qualified. Well, we're qualified for sure, and we've qualified top with 12 points. PSV have 8 points. Lons, who are below them, the only team that could potentially qualify, still with 5 points. So if the Lons were to beat Sevilla, and we would beat PSV, goal difference is 3. So if Lons were to win 1-0 and we would beat PSV 3-1, I think Lons would go through. But again, I think PSV might be looking for a draw or a win here because they are going to be playing their full strength side. We're not. Aaron Ramsey will probably get his first ever Champions League game, which he deserved a long time ago. But Sevilla are going to be really at it against Lens because if Sevilla were to win against Lens, they will jump above them in the league to third, which guarantees them Europa League. And if we know anything about Sevilla, is they know how to win the Europa League. So Sevilla will be trying very hard to beat Lens because they want that Europa League spot. Either way, we're top. I don't think it will. If we lost 3-0 with a second string team and like 3 or 4 youth players, I don't think that would necessarily derail any momentum because it's so different and you can feel it. Because obviously, I think if like Carabao Cup, sometimes it can derail a little bit because you're in a good run and then you have a couple first teamers and then they go in the next game with that feeling of a loss. I think it can be a trouble. But we've got PSV and then next Sunday at 2:00, we're at home to Brighton. And then there's a 6-day gap and we're away to Liverpool. So it's a big week because if we were to lose to Villa, and then we've got Brighton next week, who have notoriously beaten us at home the last 2-3 years seasons, and then going away to Anfield, I'm talking by Christmas Day, we could be saying we are third or fourth and we've not won in 3. So today's a big one because I think you get the momentum, you take it into Brighton, you win that, and then the Liverpool game becomes just a huge top of the table clash. But Liverpool, on the other hand, they've got Palace away today up until the Arsenal game. This is they have Palace away, then they've got a Europa League, and then next Sunday they're against Man United. Then they're away to West Ham in the Cup, and then they're home to us. So I don't know. They'll probably smash Man United, but they probably lose to Palace. That's because that's the Premier League, and that's the Premier League we've enjoyed over the last few years. Especially this week, to be honest. I think it's been the best week in the Premier League for a couple of years because of the results and the bizarre nature and how many goals have gone in. But there's not much to write home about the PSV one. I think Ramsdale will start. I think Eddie will start. I think Trossard would start. It depends a lot on the team today because I think if Havertz doesn't start and he comes on for last 20, I think he'll hope he'll probably take on the Odegaard number 8 role. You might see Lewis Skelly. You might see. Finally, I'd like to see. Why is it not coming to my head? Raul Walters, because he's been on the bench last couple games. He's been on the bench, for the last couple of years here and there. And Wary, who was played against Brentford away last year, became the youngest player in the Premier League. Those players I'd actually like to see because it's rare that you're in a situation where usually you've got to win this or draw this just to guarantee qualification. So you go with a half and half. This genuinely could be a free hit. You could put the full youth team out with Aaron Ramsey and Go and Eddie up front. In the middle is just a pure youth team and just give them an opportunity. And obviously you don't want to destroy their confidence by getting beaten 6-0 by an up front PSV team. And it's a big old atmosphere as well. But I think we could go a little harder than we would. Like, that middle could be El Nani, Jorginho, and Havertz. We could have Walters at the back with Kiwior. Again, we're so short on fullbacks at the minute with Timber and Tomiyasu out. It's either Ben White and Zinchenko or you find somewhere. Havertz plays left back like Germany. It's getting tough there. But as far as forwards, I think you can get Trossard in. It's a perfect game for Smith Rowe and Vieira, but they're just not available. No, I don't know. We'll see. Again, he might still play someone like Saka just because Saka, to be a top player, you need to do good numbers in the Champions League. And missing games doesn't help it. It's like in the NFL when Dak Prescott's been removed from games the last hour, like the last quarter of a game because we're so far ahead. It's hard to go for like MVPs or any kind of crazy stats personally when you're missing quarters because he's done that 6-7 times. a game and a half he's technically missed, where at the end of games he could be just throwing big touchdowns, things like that. So I'm sure Saka will be thinking, I'd like to play because I want to keep up this record of getting a goal and assist or something in the Champions League every game. But time will tell. Today is a huge one. I'll try and finish this podcast up now so that I'll start editing and loading it up now in the next half an hour. Hopefully this will be up before the midday game, which is going live in 2 hours from recording. I'm hoping it'll be up so you can listen to it. But if not, it's mainly for the game later. So you could probably listen to it during the Liverpool game or during the 3 o'clockers. Or you can listen to it in hindsight and see how wrong I was about the Villa game. So that would be fun as well. But no, just a short one here. I think we're going to start doing a few more preview and review type Arsenal-y ones around the big Premier League one on the Wednesday with Simon. So make sure you subscribe, get your friends to subscribe, download all the episodes, listen to them 1,000 times if you can, because it all helps. But we will see you on Wednesday, where hopefully Arsenal are still top. We'll see. And hopefully Unai Emery will not be bringing us up anymore, as well as Emi Martinez, because Villa seem to be that team full of players that just like to talk about Arsenal. I don't have a Joe outro, so I'm just going to end it. But we'll see you Wednesday. Enjoy the games. Bye-bye.